Hey, Robert.
Hey, Aaron.
There we
Am I
go.
coming in?
Yes, we got you.
So when balancing the mind, body, spirit, when coming to these understandings about the three beliefs, when all of these you call them trapped emotions. And I'm trying to figure out if even that's an illusion, because all emotions are generated by one of the three beliefs of the ego, right?
Mhm.
So it's almost like, how can it even be stored? It's just that you're believing one of the three beliefs in every moment, right? So
Bingo.
how can you really store it, right? So that brings me back to this thing that seems to keep cycling around as I'm going through this process. um, I almost get a sense that maybe in my home growing up, anger was a much more tolerated emotion than any other emotion. And so I notice the cycle where I have a few really nice enlightened days, really feeling free of everything and unburdened. And then it starts to get a little bit, it kind of dulls down a little bit for a few days and gets maybe a little difficult. And then it gets to where it's almost such a level of just insane undercurrent of anger and frustration, to the point that it begins to bubble over at like screaming at my wife or yelling at my kids, or taking long walks where I literally walk for hours and I still can't seem to get rid of that undertow of anger and frustration. And then eventually it gets to the point where I give up. I've spent the whole last few days, no, it's not that. Nope, it's not that. Nope, can't be that. It's inside of me. And finally, it feels like I get to this exhaustive point where finally I just end up crying. And as soon as I cry, then the cycle kind of repeats itself again. Then I go to feeling all right. Is this does this have to do with this body's particular start in life being a little extra hard than most people? Is this a cycle you've heard of before in all of your experiences with other people? What can you say about this, and what could be done to help mitigate this
Mhm.
seemingly repetitive cycle?
So you're talking about the mind, body, spirit complex, and it's important to really see that that's what we actually are: is a complex of a spirit being projected into a mind, which is being projected into a body. And I believe the Course of Miracles says that the body is um, sorry, the mind is the activating agent for the spirit, in the same way that the body is the activating agent for the mind, meaning that the spirit needs a mind in order to do anything or be anything or experience anything. And then a mind needs a body so that the mind can experience anything or be anything or do anything. Yeah. So the body acts out the mind and the mind acts out the spirit. So you touched on it also when you said that I don't believe that emotions can truly be trapped, because our belief in them is what sustains them. And so this is going back to the masculine, feminine approaches to healing. Questioning the belief is a masculine approach to healing, and crying, feeling, letting pain be felt and released in love and forgiveness is a feminine approach to healing. So I've used the analogy a few times of saying that feminine healing is a bit like if you are a house, if your body is a house and the house gets flooded with water, all the faucets are on. Let's say there's 3 faucets on, right? The bathtub, the kitchen sink, and the bathroom sink. Those are the 3 beliefs, right? So as long as those faucets are running, it's going to be causing that water to flood the house. The water is the emotion. So the feminine approach to healing is to open all the doors and windows and let the water flood out, which is very necessary to do. But if you don't turn those faucets off, the water's going to accumulate again. And then a week from now, you're going to have to release again and again. And you kind of can be just a perpetual shadow worker. So at some point, you have to question what's causing all of this toxic emotion to build up, which is, of course, what you believe. So questioning the belief is shutting off the faucet, and that's the masculine approach to healing. So both are equally necessary, but without one, you're incomplete. There's still some healing to be done, in the same sense that if you just questioned the beliefs, but you didn't deal with the traumas from the past and release them into love, then that would still be stored in the body somewhere in the chakra network. So yeah, the beliefs aren't, or the emotions aren't trapped per se. They are being sustained by the beliefs that create them. And if we look at how does ego, which is just the activity of identifying, how does that cause all these actions to happen? All these selfish driven actions that we perform, which cause suffering? Well, emotions create actions. Meaning if I have a bunch of sadness built up in me because I'm very lonely and I can't be alone, or else I'm very codependent and I get very lonely by myself. Well, if I have lots of loneliness, the emotion of loneliness in me, my body's going to do lonely things. I'm going to cry. I'm going to be sad. I'm going to spend time by myself. I'm going to complain to people about how lonely I am. The actions will follow the emotion. So ego is using those emotions that the beliefs cause to spur the karmic actions. So the release from the emotion will have an immediate change in the actions of the person. But if you don't change the belief and get rid of the belief, the emotions will accumulate again over time and the actions will resurface again. Right? So that separate self will just be perpetuated.
That seems to be the cycle I'm caught in right there. It's maybe, yeah. So a real life example would be the next time it comes around, like when I'm starting to feel that tightness in my chest and that irritability and that anger, I'm no longer viewing things from this loving place that I had been for days on end. I feel like I've done this though. I stop and question why the emotion is surfacing, like reverse engineer the anger. So anger is outcomes have been blocked. So
yeah.
Right. So
the world exists.
Gotcha.
So let's get practical with it. Can you give me the example of what exactly causes the anger?
It doesn't seem to be anything in particular. It seems to be I'll have days on end that are just lovely and pleasant, and it seems like concepts are moving into the heart. I'll have these like epiphanies, and some of your teachings will move into a deeper place, and I'll just be like, oh, this is so nice. This feels so good. And then I'll just wake up one day feeling just straight out of bed, just feeling just like, don't talk to me. I'm not in the mood to do any playing this morning. Everything that everyone does aggravates me. Everything seems to be working against me, and it just accumulates from that motion. And so it's like, I see the situations I'm in, and I'm like, man, yesterday I was on top of the world, and this doesn't actually matter. And even to some degree, when I'm in that state, I still know that. I know that it can't be this. I know it can't be that. It can't be the driver. It can't be the kids. But yet I'm still stuck in this angst and anger and frustration. So that would be a practical morning when it starts to happen, how it would feel and unfold.
Okay, great. So I'm glad you brought this up. This is a very subtle play of ego once we are on this seeking journey. And it took me quite a while to catch this one, because this one also ate my lunch for many years. And what I realized it was, and you can hear it in your language too, the way you're describing. Some days everything's working great. I'm getting the truths. I'm in bliss or happiness. And then the next day, I'm in this bad mood. If we get attached to the highs of spiritual seeking, then the lows will also be very painful. And this is very much a Buddhist teaching that they'll say like nirvana and samsara are one, meaning it's all the play of consciousness. Like nirvana is just an activity of consciousness, and bondage is just an activity of consciousness. Samsara is the cycle of birth and death, reincarnation. So they say nirvana and samsara are one, both must be transcended, which means when nirvana is there, when we're in the blissed out state or everything seems to be working well, we don't let the person grab it and say, oh, I'm on top of the world today. The claimer is still claiming that for itself, which means no harm, no foul there, right? It feels great to claim it when it's going well, but the reverberation is that on the lows, the separate self will cry out in anger and frustration that it's not having a blissful day.
Yeah.
Very, very subtle and difficult to see because, of course, happiness is what we're all looking for. It's what we all come here for. But
you know what I think I was actually, that was one of my things I was going to ask you today was, you can't be any more attached to the kind acts the body does or the resulting feelings any more than you can be attached to the stories and history and abuse and the resulting feelings of the character either. It was actually one of my, I was actually going to ask you, both have to be equally. So that's funny. You're actually saying exactly the question I was going to ask you. It's funny. Cool. Yeah.
So can you see that in your own mind? If you can think back to those days that are really good, can you identify where the doer was claiming it?
Yeah, I think I can. I think I see. Yeah. Yeah, I think so. Yeah. Yeah, I think so, man. I'm doing it. I'm feeling better. I'm doing these things that are causing relief and suffering. You know, yeah, definitely.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm feeling better, this and that. I'm the self who is being improved upon. That's the doer. That notion is the doer.
Okay, yeah, it's definitely, I see what you're saying, man. Yeah.
Very sneaky,
So,
isn't it?
man, oh man, dude, it's well, I think we talked about this last week. It is sneaky, man. It's so subversive. It comes in right behind in the back door in places you're just not looking. Okay, let me end with this. I'm not going to get into all the rest of these because of the new people and staying on subject. So, and it's actually an offshoot of what you just said. So when I'm aware that I'm falling into the person, one of my techniques that I try to do to get back into what you call the seat of awareness is I use this idea and I say, okay, so that's just the body's driving the vehicle. The body's driving. I'm just watching the body drive down the road. A car pulled out in front of the body. Not me, I'm just watching it. And so this kind of allows me to detach and release from the body when I'm thinking of it, right? I'm not to the point of this journey where it just happens automatically. I have to really focus on being the observer, right? Does that make sense? Mm-hmm. So that's my technique, is just saying, okay, this is the body having a conversation with Aaron. This is a body hearing what Aaron's saying back and thus changing the conditioning of the body, therefore changing the
actions the body performs.
Yes. So that's my technique. It seems to work for me. Two questions on that. Is that more or less the most effective way to do it? And if so, or if not, can you describe another more effective way of sitting in the seat of awareness, or a technique that works for separating from the body a little bit more, if this isn't the best technique?
Well, ultimately, whatever works best for you at that moment is the best technique, because all techniques will outlive their usefulness at some point. They will stop being effective at some point. And so then awareness will direct you to a new way of seeing. So I can't say what is the best technique or not. For me, what seems to work the most is simply just contemplation on a daily basis. And this is just something that goes on kind of its own accord. The more interested you get in this idea of, man, am I really not doing any of my own actions? Like, actions are just going on. Is that really true? And you start to look at things that happen. And I find that the things that are easiest to overlook are the best points of inquiry that can cause the biggest epiphanies to happen. Because it's really easy to see that I'm not the doer when a car pulls out in front of me and I find myself leaping out of the way and rolling onto the grass or whatever. And you can go, oh, wow, like I didn't have any time to think about that. The body just did it. All the neurons fired and the muscles contracted and the blood pumped and I leaped into the, I couldn't have done that. If I had thought about it, I would have gotten smushed, right? Easy to see that.
Yeah.
But if I'm making myself a sandwich, well, I want bread first. You got to have the bread first. We're going to put mayonnaise on the napkin first. I mean, you got to have bread. I'm the doer of that thought. Next, I want some meat. I'll put the meat on next. I like meat. I thought of that. That was me. So those are the ones that I will just, even as I'm making the sandwich, just to begin to ask myself, well, where did the urge to make a sandwich come from? Hunger. Well, did I do hunger? No, hunger just happened. How is it that I'm making this sandwich? Well, my mom taught me how to make a sandwich when I was a little kid. If I had never heard, let's say I grew up in a foreign country that doesn't have sandwiches, could I have had the thought to make a sandwich? No. So sandwiches are also a product of my conditioning. And I'll just start to recognize that actually none of these actions find their origin in my mind. My mind got all of them from somewhere else, and then it's just repeating past actions and thoughts. And so that is the flow of life working. Right? Everything happens through the flow of life. All actions are the dreamer's actions, not the dream character. The dream character can't perform any of its own actions because it is also an activity of the dream. So as you start to question non-doership, you'll start to recognize what I think is a person is actually an activity. If that makes sense. What I think of I is an activity that consciousness is doing. It's always in the act of doing something. And if you really tune into that, what happens is there's such a space of expansion that opens in you. Such a like vast openness of just observing, because you realize I don't actually know what I'm going to do or say. I don't know what the next moment is going to, how it's going to arise. I don't even know what the next urge is going to be. Sometimes I just find myself in the mood for ice cream. Where did that come from? It just happened. And so just contemplation for me in this way, and it's very fun to do. It's like a joyful activity, because every time awareness catches hold of that truth, that expansiveness is there. And it's always felt as this kind of bliss, this really innate inner freedom opens up for you. And more as those moments are experienced, the idea that I'm a separate self occupying a body, performing my own actions independently of life becomes so absurd and ridiculous that you start to almost feel foolish for having ever believed it. So it's something that accumulates. Don't expect it to just, the hammer to just drop in one go. But you'll find that the more interested you are in it, the more you want to recognize that you're not the doer, the more the mind will begin ruminating on it naturally. And that curiosity will just continue to peak, and it will eventually lead you to the realization that there truly is no doer.
Thanks for sharing that technique with me, man. Cool. Thank you. And I know what you mean about those things, like you're talking about moving into the heart center, right? Things moving into the heart. It finally hit me, the one you said about the mind can never know anything. Mm-hmm. It finally hit me like 2 days ago. I was like, because I've been teaching my little girl, we always say, we call this whatever we're calling it, but that's just a noise we make with our mouth. Mm-hmm. It can never be the noise we're making. And so that's how we tell Maverick anything we're teaching her, we teach her what things are called. And I actually I just told her again for something, and then I was like, oh shit. The mind actually isn't physically capable of actually knowing anything. It throws up anything it can about it and only communicates with that idea about it.
Yeah.
It actually can't. And I'm like, whoa, man. Like once it hits it, I love those things when they hit like that.
Yeah.
But,
so can you see how the separate self is also just a label the mind connects with? It's just an idea. Doership is just an idea. You never actually find proof of it anywhere.
Yeah, I'm at the like I can feel I'm still relating to it mostly conceptually, and I really
Yeah.
understand it so well conceptually,
Yeah.
and I still believe it to be true, but I don't experience that expansion yet.
Mm.
I know that it's true, like I know it, and thanks for that question. Yeah, but it hasn't sank like other ones have yet. But when it does, I won't have to call you anymore, will I?
Exactly. Yeah. You won't be on this call anymore.
Yeah, exactly. Okay. Well, thanks, man. Thank you so much for your help.
And I will say this just as we close for your final thought, that there will always be a feeling that I have independent free will to choose whatever I want. And that's actually a true feeling. You do have free will to choose whatever you want, but the source has that feeling, not the person. So the feeling will be there always, but don't mistake it for the person's feeling, that the person is feeling it has free will. The person can't feel anything. It's just an idea. The mind is claiming the source's feeling of free will for the person. And that's the recognition of non-doership.